So I want to bring on my first guest today, Dusty Staub. He's a staple on my program. He heads up Staub Leadership International. It's a management consulting firm that focuses on human systems excellence. He's the author of 3 books, The Heart of Leadership, 12 Practices of Courageous Leaders, the latest. Dusty, thanks for making time for the Jay Severin Show with me, Chris Salcedo.
Hey, Chris, my pleasure.
Okay, so let's talk about, look, it was a pretty stinging rebuke. I led off the program talking about how liberals in the wake of the election I don't think they got the message. Because what I'm hearing a lot of them saying is they're making excuses. Wendy Davis in Texas blaming Ebola for her loss. It doesn't seem to occur to these liberals that perhaps it is their policies, it is the way they govern or the way they conduct themselves in office that maybe the American people had a problem with.
Yeah, I would agree, Chris. You know, you and I have argued before. I tell you that I think Obama is a good man but a bad president, that I think he's smart but he doesn't know how to be an executive. And you've argued with me, and I've really been thinking very hard about that. And one of my favorite people, Albert Einstein, said, the definition of insanity is doing what you've always done and expecting a different result. But the definition of stupidity is knowing the definition of insanity and still doing what you've always done. So we either have to assume our president is insane or stupid at this point.
Well, you know what? I can't disagree. And you know what? I honestly believe this of Barack Obama. He doesn't have the intellectual capability to look at the other side of the argument and try to find middle ground. He's spent 6 years, Dusty, as the occupier of the Oval Office with this attitude. Let me be clear. I won, and you got to do what I say. And he doesn't realize that there are a lot of other people that won their elections too. He has not met Republicans halfway. Hell, he hasn't even taken one step in Republicans' directions. Let me illustrate something here with how the mainstream press is covering this. Here's Matt Lauer, Dusty, from the Today Show yesterday. He's interviewing Chris Christie. Now, listen to the tone of his question and listen to the substance of his questions, and then let me see if you pick up on the theme.
So the world changes now in Washington. Republicans have control of the House and Senate for the first time in 8 years. You know what that means. In January, voters are going to say, what are you going to do with the power? Opposing the president's policy is not a policy. Specifically, what can Republicans do with this power? Tell me specifically one area where you would like this new Republican majority to compromise, real compromise with President Obama.
Okay, so here's Matt Lauer. That, by the way, those were questions spliced back to back by our pals over at the Media Research Center. But Dusty, at first blush, what do you make of Matt Lauer's line of questioning?
Well, the line of questioning is loaded. It's assuming that the Republicans have to be conciliatory and positive and accommodating, which is what's been demanded of them all along, while it's not been reciprocated from the Democratic-controlled Senate nor from the White House. And I will tell you, I've been studying leadership now for over 40 years, and I've written 3 books about it, and worked with thousands of executives and hundreds of companies, and I will tell you that any CEO who had as many misfires as this president would have been sacked by the board of directors. The president said, my policies are on the ballot. Well, he got a stinging rebuke for his policies, but I do not hear him saying, I really hear the message, I need to change and I need to meet the Republicans and need to work with them. It's more like the press, the liberal press, and the president is saying, all right, now you have to accommodate us. And that's not quite the right message to send.
Yeah, simply put, when the Republicans were in the minority, they had to listen to Obama because Obama won. Now that the Republicans have won, the message from the mainstream press like Matt Lauer and also President Obama and Senator Harry Reid is, oh, now, since you've won, Republicans, now you have to compromise.
That's right.
What? I don't. Wait. So let me get this straight. When Democrats win, it's their agenda with no opposition. But when Republicans win, they have to compromise with Democrats. That's the way it works?
Yeah, that's the old heads I win, tails you lose.
Exactly. And so what about, as we look forward, Dusty, what do you expect out of this occupier of the Oval Office, President Obama? Do you actually think that he will actually move forward and take a step. That maybe he's just rhetorically trying to save the Democrats, but after he starts getting into negotiations, maybe he can take a couple of steps in their direction?
You know, I would hope so, Chris. Any sane person, I think, would. Just about any president we can go back and name would have taken this as a real lesson and would have found a way
I know,
to accommodate.
a sane person, yes. I'm just talking about with Mr. Obama and what we've seen from him so far. Is there anything that leads you to believe that he has that sanity in him, that he actually cares a whit about what the electorate said? I'm struck by when he got into that press conference the other day. You know what he said? He said, well, only 1/3 of the people voted. And I want you to know that I heard you, those 1/3, but I also hear the 2/3 who didn't vote. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
What's the message from the 2/3 that didn't vote? What message was that?
Well, that we've given up, that we don't believe in this process anymore, that we are cynical. And what I would say is, to answer your question very bluntly, no, he has not shown in 6 years the capacity, the willingness, the character to be able to really flex and meet people and to have the mental flexibility to work with that. He is the biggest thing that brings people down. Again, we talked about this in a radio show not too long ago, you and I, hubris, the Greek word hubris, of excessive arrogance, intellectual arrogance, where you think you know you're right, you don't even have to listen to the other side, and if they don't go along with you, you just take your marbles and go home. And
well,
that's
perfect,
the attitude.
perfect example, Dusty. Perfect example right here.
Steve, when you say, what can I offer, I shouldn't have to offer anything. They're not doing me a favor by paying for things that they have already approved for the government to do.
That's President Obama talking about the debt ceiling negotiations. But you know what? It's not just with that particular issue. It's across the board. I shouldn't have to give them anything. They should listen to me. I won. And aside from the fact there's substance, what he said was wrong, because we all know that budgets can be trimmed and budgets are year to year, and we don't have to spend more every single year. We can spend less. Let's just forget that for a moment. But I shouldn't have to give that. That's his attitude. I shouldn't have to do a thing. That's his attitude.
That's the problem. I think this election was a repudiation of Obama's leadership and the Democratic stewardship in the Senate. I don't think it was an embracing of the Republican brand, and the Republicans need to be careful in the next 2 years.
You're right.
That they don't bend over backwards too far, and yet they show that they can stand up in a principled way and move things forward. I think that's going to be a real challenge.
Dusty, give us your website, will you please?
Yes, it's www.staubleadership.com. There are articles there that are free. There are video clips, 2 minutes to 10 minutes. Those are all free, and there's information on the services we provide in my books. And
if you have, you know what, maybe we can suggest a reading list for Barack Obama. Start out with The Heart of Leadership, 12 Practices of Courageous Leaders. He could use it. Dusty Staub, the author of that book. He heads up Staub Leadership International. Always a pleasure, my friend.
Chris, my pleasure anytime.